Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 233 of the Laravel News Podcast. Today is March 12th, 2025, unless you're in the upside down, in which case it's March 13th. Folks, we are nearing the end of the first quarter of the year. Have you seen this website where you can sort of, it's like tell time in corporate speak? And so it'll say like, oh, this is the first quarter. Or this is like, you're 2 months into or you're 3 weeks into the first quarter, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't seen this website, but corporate speak for time is fun because we work in like trimesters.
Yes.
So we've got like
that's even weirder.
4 monthly, but our year does not start in January. It starts in October.
Oh, gosh.
So
your year starts in October, and then you do October, November. Wait, so October, November, December, January? Like that's your trimester?
We're in like T2 now. We're in T2 now.
Trimester 2? That's what you
we're in trimester 2. That's right. Yeah,
so I guess I could see that. I guess as a financial institution, I suppose I don't know how that works because
I don't know how.
I suppose if you're doing like taxes for people or something like that, I maybe like that first quarter needs to bleed over or something. Like you need to kind of overlap the years.
But our financial year is July to June.
So okay, nope, no idea. This is great.
I don't understand how it works or why it works.
Yeah, when does your like PTO bank roll over? Like when do you get more paid time off? Is that some random date too? Your year starts in October, but your financial year starts in June to July, and then
our PTO rolls over. It accumulates. It is a cumulative thing. So you get 4 weeks per year, but it just keeps going. You accrue it. Yeah, you accrue. I think it's something like 2 or 4 hours a week of something like that. I don't know.
Probably based on your tenure and all that stuff. Folks, this is how you know that you've been in the game for too long. You're talking about tenure and accruing PTO and all the folks out there who are like, consider themselves to be uber successful are like, yeah, I just take time off whenever I want. I work for myself.
Yeah.
Oh man. There's pros and cons, isn't there? If you want to hear more talk about this sort of stuff, you should check out our other podcasts because we shouldn't really be talking about this stuff on here. We should write this down as North meets South next time.
Yes.
Hey, folks, we want to give a quick shout out to PropelAuth and to CodeRabbit, who are our wonderful sponsors this show. Really excited to be talking about them later. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about some releases, some news, some packages, and some tutorials. And I do apologize, but not really, because this is my weekly time to catch up with my wonderful friend, Mr. Dorinda, who is, by the way, going to be going to Laracon this year. I'm so excited to be able to hang out in person once again. It's been too long, my friend. It has been far too long, but it is going to be a party. So I'm excited to see you there. Anyway, folks, shall we get into it? Let's get into it. Temporary context scope in Laravel 12.1. Now, this was written on March 4th, 2025, and at that time, the Laravel team had tagged version 12.1, the very first minor release of Laravel 12, which includes a context scope method, an array partition method, a raw SQL method, and more. You know what, Michael? You were talking about this just before the show, so I have a feeling you've already looked at this, and you are excited about the partition stuff, so I'm going to let you take this one.
Yeah. So collection partitioning has been in Laravel for a long time. And what partitioning allows you to do is to take a collection previously, or thanks to Liam Duckett's contribution, to partition on the array helper, a array into various parts. Now, I think it's always like A and B partitioning. It's not like buckets. It's A or B. So this
Truth or falsy.
Truthy or falsy. So you basically say collect, or in this case, array : partition. You pass it your array of inputs. And then as the second argument, you pass it a closure, which will return true or false. And then the items will be partitioned into an array of, these two different components. So in this case, we're talking evens and odds. So if you were to pass an array of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it would then return you an array with 2 items, each being an array of the relevant items based on the truth test. So the evens would have 2, 4 in it, and the other would have 0, 1, 3, and 5. So it's always handy. We do this a lot where we receive payloads of applicants for a loan, and we need to determine which is a business, like a business entity or a company or a trust, and which is a person in that payload, and they're all kind of flat. So we pass it through this truth test, and then it gives us a split of like, these are all the people and these are all the business entities. So partitioning is very good for that kind of stuff.
Oh,
love to see it in arrays. Because, often you have this data in an array already, and then you've got to put it into a collection, and then you get it back as an array. So being able to just work with arrays natively is very nice. So thanks to Liam for this contribution.
You were saying just before, and you can continue to take the rest of this one, but I was going to say, you said, I was actually running upstairs to grab something, and you said in my headphones while I was away from my desk, you said, I love a good partition. And I was like, yes, sir. I love a good partition. Partition is underutilized, undervalued collection method, and I use partition all the time. Absolutely love it. And I guess one of the really cool things, right? If you're looking at the documentation, I think it does this, but it does like array destructuring. Not destructuring. Is it explode? Basically, you specify, hey, here's an array. Here's the first argument. Here's the second argument. I know we don't. None of us know. But when you do partition, it will split them into those two pieces. So I don't know. It's just a really clever, great thing. It happens all the time that you need to split things into two groups and then operate them on them independently. And so it's just really great. So if you've never used partition before, keep it in your back pocket. You will run across something in the near future. I'm positive.
If you've ever wondered, like, these are the kinds of things that have been done where what you would probably have done before Laravel, before these kinds of collection helpers, is you would for each over your base array, and you would have like $A and $B in there, and then you would assign things. So it's not like any of this stuff is unique or special to Laravel. It's just that as with most things in Laravel, it's just providing you a nice developer experience over this underlying functionality, so you can have clear and readable code in your services, in your controllers, wherever, without having to worry about doing this nested for each construct all over the place.
Absolutely. Okay. Do you want to take the rest of them?
May as well.
You can take all of those. I'll just do the next one.
Okay. Eric Comp added a get raw SQL method to query exceptions. So this is a new method. If you were to catch exceptions, you will now be able to return the raw SQL representation of the query with the embedded bindings. So you can use this to report on any problematic query errors and things like that in a Laravel, a Laravel 11 and beyond application. You do this in your Bootstrap app file where you would have with exceptions, and then you can exceptions report and then pass it a closure that accepts the query exception. And then you can do whatever you need to do, whether that's to report the error into Sentry or into wherever you are using your error reporting, whether that's a logging service like Papertrail or whatever. You can handle that and get the entire executed query. Whether or not you want to put the raw queries into these services would be up to you based on your security obligations and things like that. But it is handy to have a full query so you can just copy paste it and do whatever diagnostics you need to. So thanks to Eric for that one. Luke Kuzmish contributed a context scope method that it can include context for the duration of a function call and then restore the context to what it was before the call. So we've seen this kind of behavior inside the Laravel framework in a few different places, where you kind of take a value that exists in the container or existing config, you store it in a temporary variable, you override that value, and then you do some behavior with this new like runtime context or runtime configuration, and then you restore to the original value. So this allows you to, where previously you'd add some context, you'd have a try catch, and then you might have a finally block that forgets some context for that specific situation. You can now do a context : scope, pass it a closure that does what was previously in the try block, and then in the second parameter, you can specify what you want to scope to that closure. So you can learn more about the context scope method in the documentation, which we'll have links to in the show notes. And lastly, Kevin Bowie, Australian Kevin Bowie, added the tappable trait to the testing pending command class, which allows you to handle assertions all in one go. So if you've ever done like a response tap and you want to dump the response, or you want to do some assertions on a subset of what came back from that response, you'd use the tap command. So this tappable trait allows you to do the same thing on artisan commands, where you can make expectations and assertions against the return without having to kind of assign that to a separate response variable and do that, in a separate block. So thank you to Kevin for that. That is everything that we have for Laravel 12.1. We'll have links to everything for you in the show notes.
Very cool. Nice. You know what? I have not used the context thing yet. Have you used context?
No, I do like in hindsight, now that we know that what Nightwatch is and that it's here, that like you saw, okay, yeah, sure, this was all added to the framework in support of a lot of that functionality, but I haven't had the opportunity to use it. We've only just moved over to Laravel 11 in the last month or so we haven't really been in a position to use any of the new goodies yet. And I say new as though these things aren't 12 months old. So
sure. I do love that, like, because the Laravel team is dogfooding their own product, meaning they're using Laravel to build applications for Laravel stuff. When they run into these problems, they share their solutions with the wider audience, right? So Pinout is a perfect example, right? So Tim McDonald, had a problem with when he was doing some work on Forge. Hey, wanted to be able to use feature flags. Pinout was invented and then sent out to the world. And so context, very similarly, instead of just keeping those things to themselves, so like, you know what, let's make this part of the framework and let's just build this in so that everybody can use it. I love that. Absolutely love that. So cool stuff there. Thanks to the team. Hey, speaking of updates, Livewire 3.6 has been released. So some cool new things that we wanted to talk about here. Caleb Porzio added support for defining JavaScript actions, which are JavaScript functions that can be called from wire-click or $wire to either run client-side code only or to apply optimistic updates before triggering a server request. So what this looks like is if you have like a Laravel Volt component, you can define the class for that component, which is just regular PHP class that extends the component, and then you can have all the different methods in there, and then you have beneath that your HTML, your blade component, right, as it were, and then beneath that you have your script, which is pretty cool. So this is a single file component, right? Think back to like Vue 2, if you will. And we had kind of everything defined in that one block. And this is really nice. It keeps everything together. So you can see your PHP class, you can see your display stuff with Blade, and now you can add that script there. And what you can do here is you can wire, click, do something. And then the magic of this is that it will run the client-side code only. And then it applies the optimistic update without actually making a round trip to the server. So with wire, :click, now you can do that. Now this is something you might have done before using Alpine, but it can get confusing sometimes if you're switching between the Alpine and the wire stuff. If you didn't know which one was which, or if you were unfamiliar with it, if you hadn't done that, you might not understand what exactly was going on there. So instead of doing that, you just now define a JavaScript function, and then you just call wire: :click, and then the name of that thing to get that optimistic update. Really, really cool stuff. Love it. Thank you so much, Caleb. You can also, by the way, call that from PHP using the JS method. So you can say this, if you're in your Livewire component, this JS on post saved, and that will do the same thing. That will just call the JavaScript on the front end without making that round trip to the server. Josh Hanley contributed a few new HTML directives, as did Caleb. So here they are: wire show, wire text, wire cloak, and wire transition. These are directives. So let's talk about what they are each in order. The wire show and wire text directives are just Livewire equivalents of Alpine's X show and X text. Again, instead of sort of mixing the things here, we're just now creating an alias, if you will, for Livewire, which is wire show, wire text. So what do these do? Wire show, for example, toggles an element's visibility using CSS. That's all it does. So instead of having to do X-show and then have some JavaScript in there, you can now just do wire: show, and then say, if this property is true or false, then it will toggle it, right? Using CSS instead of, the JavaScript stuff that you were doing before. Wire text dynamically updates an element's content, which makes it really useful for building these optimistic UIs, which is kind of the theme of this, right? They also have wire cloak and wire transition. which do similar things. Wire cloak basically just hides things before the Livewire component is fully rendered on the page. So if there is, some piece of your UI that depends on values being loaded inside of your Livewire component, you can hide those using wire cloak. Once your component is fully rendered or fully mounted, it will then display those things. And then wire transition is if you're using Blade to show and hide things. So if you have a @if conditional in Blade, what you can do is the element inside of there, you can put wire transition on it. And if that if check passes and becomes truthy and now displays that content, wire transition will take care of transitioning that element in using CSS. And then you can define, the duration of that transition, what properties should be transitioned, like opacity and things like that, and ease in, ease out, those sorts of things. So some great updates here and really excited about these. I love that Caleb is continuing to push on these and that we're continuing to get updates. So thanks Josh Hanley and Caleb, Livewire 3.6.
The MongoDB PHP team released version 5.2 of the Laravel MongoDB integration. Highlights of this release include compatibility with Laravel 12, which ensures you can leverage the latest features and improvements in the framework, as well as enhanced search capabilities. Atlas Search is an embedded full-text search in MongoDB Atlas that gives you a seamless, scalable experience for building relevance-based app features, which is built on Apache Lucene. It eliminates the need to run a separate search system alongside your database. And vector search allows you to query your database on semantic meaning rather than on just keyword matches, which helps you consider the search's intent and search context to retrieve more relevant results. It supports Laravel Scout. So using MongoDB Atlas as a search engine with Laravel Scout, the integration provides an abstraction to create Atlas search indexes from a MongoDB or SQL model, and it also enables you to automatically replicate data from MongoDB into a search engine such as MealySearch or Algolia. You can now specify read preferences directly in the query or aggregation builder, which allows directing read operations to specific replica set members by setting preferred read preferences. There is an optimized session driver that has been added to store sessions in MongoDB efficiently. It includes a new MongoDB session driver for your configuration to facilitate seamless session management within your applications. There's also compatibility updates. MongoDB extension 1.21 is required for this version, and there is a deprecation in support for MongoDB version 4. Future versions will require MongoDB version 4.2 or later, as support for MongoDB 4.0 is now deprecated. Library can be installed from Composer. We'll have links to all of that for you in the show notes, including some additional resources on Laravel MongoDB's documentation, getting a quick start right here on Laravel News, and how to build a Laravel and MongoDB backed backend service. So thanks to the MongoDB PHP team for that.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, have you found yourself in a situation where you're trying to deliver a product and you're starting and you get stuck on step one? Step one being, how do I get people logged into my application? Well, if you've been hearing that and you want a quick solution, this next sponsor might be just the key for you. PropelAuth.com is the easiest way to add enterprise single sign-on to your product. So if you've been hearing from your customers, can I log into your product using my Okta account? Or can I use ADFS? Or can I use SAML? It might be time to consider adding enterprise single sign-on to your product. It can seem super daunting at first, but the people at PropelAuth make it really easy with straightforward integrations and self-serve customer support. I've been looking through their documentation, and I've got to say, it looks pretty compelling. I have built some of these systems. In fact, even this last week, I was working on building a single sign-on integration for a product that we were working on, and I've got to tell you, it's a bit of a headache. It really is. And so some of the nice things that Propel offers is they have hosted user interfaces. They have a wait list. So this whole aspect of like creating a wait list for people that can sign up early, and then you can get them into the product as you have space and as you have servers available. They handle that for you. API key authentication. They also provide things like roles and permissions, user impersonation, so you can get in and impersonate your users without having to manage that or build that out yourself. They've got user insights and user management. They've got things like multi-factor authentication enforcement, setting all that up for you, audit logs, API key rate limiting. It's insane what they offer. out of the box. And so if you are a startup, or if you've been around for a while and you're needing some help with this aspect of things, definitely check them out, propelauth.com. That's PROPELAUTH.com. Thanks so much for sponsoring the show.
The Svelte starter kit for Laravel was created by Osamudiamen Ugu and provides a Svelte version of Laravel's new starter kits. Quoting from the release notes, our Svelte starter kit provides a robust, modern starting point for building Laravel applications with a Svelte front-end using Inertia. Inertia allows you to build modern single-page Svelte applications using classic server-side routing and controllers. This lets you enjoy the front-end power of Svelte, combined with the incredible back-end productivity of Laravel and lightning-fast Vite compilation. The starter kit is patterned after the React and Vue starter kits that were officially released by the Laravel team and uses TypeScript and Shadcn Svelte. The author made the starter kit look exactly like what was released in the official starter kits. Main features include Laravel 12 support, Inertia.js, Svelte, and Inertia.js Laravel packages, Tailwind CSS, Shadcn Svelte, TypeScript, Vite, and optional server-side rendering. The package is brand new at the time of writing, and no instructions are given on setting it up, but I would imagine that it would be using the new features that we haven't spoken about that are coming or were released this week at the time of the recording to be able to use custom starter kits as part of the Laravel installer. So check this out. We'll surely have updated details in the next few days after this episode is out.
Very cool. Hey folks, if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, you might not have heard about Flux, but Flux is a Livewire component library by Caleb Porzio. And if you have not known about this yet, don't worry, there is a new version for you already. Flux 2.0 has been released, and it's got some really cool advanced components like date pickers, calendars, charts, and more. And they're built in so that they are super lean and dependency-free by the creator of Livewire, right? The dude who built the thing is the dude who built these components. So he said of this package, keeping Flux lightweight was a top priority. Instead of pulling in third-party date pickers and charts, they built everything from the ground up. And here's why. It only results in 13K added to the bundle. That's wild, right? That is absolutely wild. While exploring third-party charting and date picker libraries, they kept running into these problems. There was too much complex configuration. There's difficulty in styling them to match our designs. And then there's a lack of accessibility and localization. So if you've listened to Caleb on any of his stuff, like Notes on Work, you know how much he agonizes over these tiny little details. And it's so good to know that you're using a library that somebody has considered every detail to the nth degree. We're talking about little things like this rounded corner doesn't look exactly right. He'll go on his show or, on his podcast, and he'll talk about it for 13 minutes, and you get to kind of get a peek into the brain of Caleb. It's awesome. So with all those things, those sort of problems that we're facing with these charts and things like that, they just decided to roll up their sleeves and build it themselves. And so they did. I'm glad they did, because we now have the exact components we want for the use cases that we need and nothing more. And on top of that, when they encountered things like that they wanted to add or modify in the future, they can just do it. They don't have to make a pull request to some library out there. They have full control over the feature set. So as part of the Flux 2.0 release, Flux UI now also has a free tier of these essential UI components that are used in the official Laravel Livewire starter kit that was announced in Laracon EU. So that was a huge plus for all of us who love Livewire. So the essential UI components are now for free, and using the Laravel starter kit will give you a taste of Flux UI with Livewire and Laravel. The premium version then gives you those advanced UI components to build UIs with Livewire. Flux 2.0 Premium has per project, unlimited, or business options for purchase. So a couple of the features here that are interesting. If you're on there, you can pick themes that are pre-generated for you, or you can build your own theme using a UI tool that they have, and then you can preview it all straight on the site. So you can say, base, red, orange, amber, yellow, lime, think those tailwind colors. You can click that, it'll build it up for you, and then you can use those. They have a absolutely gorgeous date range picker component, which looks, I'm not kidding, it is one of the nicest ones I've ever seen. Like that problem of creating multiple months at a time. I think of like when I'm doing Google Flights, how difficult that is to get right, and how beautiful theirs looks. This one looks like that. It feels really, really good. And so if you need something like that, I would highly consider doing this. Please don't bother building it yourself. You're going to kick yourself to do it. And if I know Caleb, I know that the API to use this thing is absolutely gorgeous as well. So definitely check this one out at the official site, fluxui.dev. It has documentation, demos, and more. Again, if you want to try Flux, you could start with the Laravel Livewire starter kit to get a feel for it. There's also demos available for users who create an account. So there you go. Thanks, Paul Redmond, for writing this one up. Everyone's favorite human. Shout out to Paul. Thanks, guys.
Laravel core team member Christoph Rumpel in a recent video demonstrated a new package that he created called Artisan Package. Now, the package itself allows you to benchmark your Artisan commands to get metrics such as execution time, memory usage, SQL query count, and number of rows returned or affected. It's installed via Composer, as all good packages are, and the benchmark command is run by using PHP Artisan Benchmark and then passing it your Artisan command. If you don't pass in your command as an argument, it will display a list of available commands. The package only tracks query counts for queries executed through Eloquent or the Query Builder. However, contributions are welcome to improve the package. It is a good way to get a high-level overview of the performance, the behavior, the utilization of your Artisan command. Sometimes you run these things and they go into production and you go, why is this taking so long to run? Benchmark tool is something that you can use to figure out, hey, I'm running 12,000 SQL queries here instead of 4. Let's find out why that is. So thanks to Christoph for that. Check out the video. We'll have links to all of it for you in the show notes.
Folks, have you ever wanted to build a TUI? T-U-I. A text-based or a terminal-based user interface? Me either. But if you have, then you might want to check out this tool, which is called Grapheme. So let me introduce you to some of the challenges that you're going to face if you're going to build said TUI. Here it is. Accurately determining the display width of Unicode characters is really important for text alignment and formatting. If you're using a text or terminal-based interface, you don't have float left or you don't have flex box. You don't have those things available to you. So what you have to do is you have to, write out the entire line in order. If you want to create a box on the page, you have to create a bar. Then you have to create space, your title, space, bar. And then you have to do it again on the next line. And so what that means is knowing the width of a Unicode character is really important for proper text alignment and formatting, but it becomes challenging because emoji and East Asian characters occupy 2 cells in the terminal. Zero width characters like joiners or marks, they don't affect the layout, but they can cause width calculation errors. You have complex text like emojis with skin tone modifiers or flags. Those require special handling. And PHP's built-in functions don't address these sorts of edge cases. So to address them, who better than Aaron Francis to create this library, which is exactly what happened. Aaron Francis created the Grapheme library, which provides an accurate, performant, and thoroughly tested set of methods to calculate the display width of any character or a Grapheme cluster in PHP applications. Here are some of the key features. It has comprehensive Unicode support. So all those things we just talked about handles those. It's also high performance. It's optimized with early return paths and smart caching mechanisms to make sure that you can get your results as quickly as possible. It requires PHP 8.2 and it has an optional internal extension, an INTL, an INTL extension. It also aims to match the behavior of WC width, which is in modern terminal emulators as well. We've got some installation instructions on here. It's just like we would expect in a Composer, require solo term /Grapheme, and then some of the examples using the package are listed below in the show notes. So we will link that up for you. If you happen to be building those TUIs, this one seems indispensable. Thank you so much, Yannick, for writing that one up, and Aaron for creating it.
The Laravel Auto CRUD generator is a package created by Abdelrahman Mohammed that streamlines CRUD operations in Laravel by generating all necessary files and logic for a model with a single command, saving both time and effort. Key features include automatically detecting models in your app models folder, providing an interactive CLI to select a model, generates controllers, request validation, routes, views, and more, and follows Laravel's best practices for clean and maintainable code. You can install it using a Composer require, of course, publishing the package configuration, and then start generating your CRUD operations by using the auto CRUD:generate command. Some options for this command include specifying the model, selecting the type of application, whether an API or web application, generating curl requests and Postman collections for an API, and more. So you could run something like PHP Artisan autocrud generate -- model equals user -- type equals API -- repository -- curl -- postman. This will generate, this command itself will generate the following pre-populated files for you. So you'll get an API user controller, you'll get a user request form request, you'll get a user resource for returning that model to your API endpoint. You'll have a user repository for accessing that kind of stuff. You'll have a user service class for operating on the user. It will update your routes API file. It will create a curl.txt file with sample commands for each route that it generated, and a postman.json file with requests that you can import directly into Postman for testing your endpoints as you go. You can learn more about the package. We'll have links to everything in the show notes. Thanks to Yannick for writing this one up, and to Abdelrahman Mohammed for building the package.
That is really freaking cool. That is
a lot of
really
boilerplate out of the way for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely see this being super helpful if you're like, hey, I need to create a one-off little API thing that I'm building here. Okay, require Laravel auto CRUD, create a model, and generate, and just whoop, builds it all out for you. The Postman JSON thing is pretty cool too. Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like these things are super useful when you're first creating an app and you're just sort of exploring the solution space, and you don't exactly know what it needs to be yet, but you're just trying to kind of do that rapid application development mode. And something like this is really nice when you're doing that. So definitely check that one out. It's super cool. Moving on here, seamless document conversion. And when I say document conversion, what I'm talking about here is things like docx, PDF, ODT, those sorts of things. If you need to convert a document from one type to another type, this package is going to help you do that. Seamless document conversion in Laravel with Docswap. So Docswap is a Laravel package for seamless document conversion using LibreOffice. So it effortlessly converts docx, PDF, ODT, and more with a really simple and elegant API. It also, because it's a Laravel package, supports Laravel storage, which is nice. Sometimes that's a pain in the neck to set up with these packages. If it's not something specifically for Laravel storage, the methods that you have don't translate well to being able to store things in storage. And so this one does come with Laravel storage integration. It also has configurable settings and, of course, secure file handling. Here's the API. Docswap, dodop, convert. Here's the location, sample.docx, and I want to convert it to, PDF. That's it. It returns a Docswap object that has the following properties: an input file, the output file, the to format, and then the conversion service. At the time of writing, Docswap supports these types of conversions: docx, ODT, RTF, text. It also has spreadsheets like XLS or CSV, presentations like PowerPoint, images, HTML pages, XML, PDF, EPUB. It converts between multiples of them, has a really simple API, as I said before, Laravel storage integration, very efficient in the processing as it's using LibreOffice's powerful engine, and of course, error handling as well, robust exception handling for unsupported formats and conversions. As you can imagine, that's something you run into quite often when trying to convert from one format to another. It's really important that you have good error handling in those, and this has a great set of exceptions that you can rely on to give you insights into what exactly is going wrong. It does require the LibreOffice, which is available on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows, or Mac OS, and Windows. You can learn more about the package, of course, in the show notes. Thanks, Paul, for writing that one up.
If you have ever wanted to control hardware components from your Laravel application, Pinout is a Laravel package for you. Pinout will bridge the gap between web applications and hardware, enabling developers to control hardware components directly from their Laravel projects. With Pinout, you can interact with GPIO pins, control displays, and more, all within Laravel. Main features include a GPIO pin control, where you can retrieve and set the state of any GPIO pin, allowing for operations ranging from simple LED toggling to robotic controls. It allows you to integrate with displays, utilizing included drivers and displaying digits on a 7-segment display or displaying anything on a 16:2 LCD display. And you can build projects like a smart plug relay, an alarm clock, a weather station, a followers counter, and more. It supports a wide range of Raspberry Pi models, and there is a facade provided to interact with hardware via a Laravel service and Artisan commands. You can get started with the package by checking the documentation, source code, in GitHub. We'll have links to all of that for you in the show notes. Very interesting package from
That
Dan
is.
Johnson. If you've ever wanted to do some fun things with physical hardware, which seems to be happening a fair bit lately. I know that Andrew Schmelian's been doing a lot of fun stuff, and I think who is it? Ben. I think Ben Holman is doing some fun things with like an LED, like a switch flip board thing. So a lot of that going on in the community at the moment, and like the possibilities are seemingly endless with PHP these days. So definitely check that out if you've wanted to pair Laravel with some physical hardware.
That's super cool. Yeah, I love the idea. I remember even loving, so Matt Stauffer did this at one of his Laracon Online talks during all the COVID stuff. And it was like he opened up a web page and you could turn off the light in his background or turn it a different color or whatever. And that was really cool. But I think he was using something like if this, then that to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally interacting directly with hardware, not over the internet, just directly with hardware. Pretty cool stuff. Really excited about that. I don't know if it's something that I have any current use for. I mean, if I was doing smart home things, maybe something like that, I could think about that. But anyway, moving on. If you happen to be using Filament, raise your hand. If you happen to be using Spacie's Laravel permission package, raise your other hand. You now have 2 hands in the air. This package is for you. The Shield plugin for Filament. Once you install this package, you're going to have the has roles trait that you're going to add to your user model. After that, you're going to run the Shield setup command. This will publish configuration and the migrations, run the migrations, configure your application for tenancy support if needed. Out of the box, it handles predefined permissions for all of your different Filament resources. And you can, of course, add custom permissions as well. So again, if you are already using Filament, you have resources set up, and you need to be able to manage permissions for those specific resources, you can do so super easily with this. And one of the great things it does here is when you run that Shield setup command, it builds out a page for you that then lists out, here's the resources, here are all the different possible things that you might need to do on that resource, like view, create, update, restore, replicate, delete, reorder, force delete, etc. Right? So the list goes on and on. But if you don't want to have to build that out yourself, you can just use Shield, which is great. But it uses the Spatie permissions package in the background, which is something you're probably already familiar with. Many of us already use these. So that's the pitch, right? If you don't want to have to do that yourself, you don't want to have to build out a UI to manage that yourself, and you don't want to have to send your developers into database hell to try and figure out which permission to give which person using the permissions package, you can just use this and it generates the UI for you. So really cool stuff. Thanks so much for writing that one up, Paul Redmond.
Laravel Blade components have long been a go-to solution for reusable UI elements. Still, the default component system can sometimes feel limiting, especially when dealing with deeply nested structures or heavy rendering overhead. This is where Dagger components come in. Dagger is a Laravel package created by John Costa that provides an alternative to Blade components. John created this package to optimize performance in projects he has worked on with many components and reduce overhead. In addition, he wanted to explore advanced compilation techniques to enable features such as attribute forwarding, slot forwarding, and the attribute cache. The Dagger compiler processes component templates before runtime, integrating them directly into the final view output for better performance, and as a result, Laravel's standard view events do not trigger when Dagger components are rendered. You can install Dagger using Composer, run the Dagger install command, which will create a new directory structure within your application's resources directory. So you'll get a new resources Dagger views. Dagger allows you to create components the same way as you would in a default Laravel component context. However, it introduces a new functional approach to defining the components. In this new approach, the first thing within your component definition is a PHP block where the component is defined. So you specify the props, you can validate props in there as well, and then you spit out your HTML below. You can then reference the component in another Blade template using the C- prefix instead of the default X- prefix in Laravel, and this helps to differentiate them from standard Blade components. Key features of Dagger include accessing parent data from a child component using Blade's @aware directive. There is prop validation using Laravel's built-in validation rules to validate your component prompts, compiler attributes, caching components, attribute and prop forwarding, which is a powerful feature that allows you to set and override properties and attributes on nested components. There is slot forwarding, output trimming, stencils, which allow consumers of components to override named sections of a component similar to slots, but done at compile time instead of at runtime, and mix-ins that allow you to inject data and common behaviors into components. This is if you've ever run into a situation where you are rendering, I would say, inordinate numbers of components. If you have like very fine-grained components, if you are nesting and iterating over and including these things over and over and over again, being able to pre-compile all of this stuff into, as a compilation step rather than as a runtime step, you should get some decent performance gains. I've not used it myself, but it does sound like a winner. And these kinds of things are always better when they come from the realities of a production application. So shout out to John for this package. If you use it or have used it or are planning on using it, be keen to hear your experiences with it. Links to all of that in the show notes.
Very cool. Hey, folks, here's the deal. If you need browser testing, like end-to-end browser testing, I'm not talking about your unit tests, not talking about your feature tests. Maybe you call it a feature test, but I'm talking about I want to actually open up a browser and I want to test that something works. The solution up to this point has been Laravel Dusk, which is fine. However, it's not being used a ton. But specifically, let me be specific. I don't think it's being used a ton by the Laravel team, right? They're building these applications. I've asked some of the folks on the team, like, hey, you guys using Laravel Dusk to test any of those things? And the overwhelming answer I've gotten is no, we are not. So for me, it feels like there might be some flakiness around Dusk and Puppeteer. We still use it, but there is one application that we use that Dusk just continues to fail over and over and over, and we just have to retry. We have spent, no joke, weeks trying to get this thing to pass consistently, and it will not. To the rescue and on the scene is this new solution called Playwright. Now, we have not done a ton of working with it, mostly because there is no real integration with it into Laravel. But let me pitch sort of what Playwright is. Playwright is a cross-browser testing. Puppeteer really only works with Chromium and Chrome-based browsers, but Playwright supports like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge. It also will do it also has like mobile testing environments as well, which is pretty cool. Similar to Puppeteer, it has headless and had full modes, so it's got both. So you could do it in CI. Here's a cool feature. It auto-waits. Dusk did not do this. Puppeteer does not do this. It auto-waits for elements to be ready before interacting with them, so that helps reduce some of that flakiness in tests. It also has multiple contexts, so you can use a single instance of a browser, but have two of them open, so you can do things like interacting between multiple users or sessions. And one other thing that it has is network interception, so you can modify network requests and responses so that you can test various scenarios, like simulating like a slow network or mocking out an API. You can do those things, which is really cool. That's sort of the hotness around Playwright. But the integration with Laravel wasn't there. How am I going to mock something, or how am I going to write something into my database and set up my scenario that I need to do before I do Playwright? Well, now we have Laravel Playwright, which is the ability to do exactly that missing piece. How do I integrate Playwright into my Laravel application? So that's what this does. It provides the boilerplate needed to begin testing your Laravel applications with Playwright quickly. So it helps you get all of those necessary files installed. It has Laravel-specific helpers for testing, and then it gives you an example spec to demonstrate how to write end-to-end tests with Playwright. Now, the one thing I will say is this. It uses JavaScript. The test files that you're going to write are JavaScript. However, if you are using Pest, it doesn't feel that much different, because Pest almost is like this bridge between PHP and JavaScript. It feels a little more JavaScripty, the Pest side of things does. And so if you're using Pest, it's not actually that large of a leap to kind of head over this direction. And you can infer a lot of it from context clues. Just looking at this example test, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see how that would work. So then, depending on which node packager manager you're using in your project, whether it's NPM or Yarn or PNPM, whatever, there's a couple different ways you need to install Playwright into your environment. But here's what the package provides, right? Simplified setup, boilerplate generation, composer integration, and then that pre-configured example test. So you can kind of get up and started with this. What I would tell you is this. It's not insanely mature, right? This has not been out for that long, I don't think. However, the more of us that get involved in using this, I think it's got a bright future, and hopefully this becomes one of those things that just sort of takes off in the community and becomes the de facto standard. It really does seem like the better solution moving forward. And so if you're interested at all in this space, would love to have your voice and your brain involved on this project. I think it's really exciting, and it's the first movement I've seen on this sort of browser testing front in a while. So I'm really excited about this. If you are too, would love to have you download this, check it out, and then contribute. Open source, right? Contribute.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There it is.
And, you know, if you've ever spent hours reviewing your Laravel, you know, your Dusk tests and why they're not working, if you've ever had to try and catch circular dependencies in your dependency injection, or want your code reviews to catch architectural issues before they come tech debt, CodeRabbit is your AI-powered code review companion that deeply understands PHP and the Laravel ecosystem, going beyond what traditional static analysis tools can catch. CodeRabbit provides automatic PR summaries and file change walkthroughs. It runs popular linters like PHP Stand, Biome, and Rough. It will highlight code and configuration security issues and enables you to write custom code review instructions and AST grep rules. CodeRabbit are proud supporters of the PHP open source ecosystem and maintainers of projects like Pinkery and Cache, and their commitment to open source means that they help maintainers focus on innovation rather than repetitive code reviews. CodeRabbit is free for open source, and there is also a 14-day free trial with no credit card needed. If you sign up at CodeRabbit.ai, you can get started in 2 clicks with GitHub or GitLab. Thank you very much to CodeRabbit for sponsoring the show.
Okay, after that, we have a large list of tutorials. And so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think 11 tutorials. What I'll say about these is this. We've had a lot more tutorials written in the last couple months than we previously did. And a lot of them really help to focus in on and explain further things that happen to be in the documentation, but maybe don't necessarily provide a really robust set of examples for how you might go about using that particular feature. And so I would highly encourage you to go through and take a look at these things. Not all of them are that, though. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them, and then Michael, I think you could probably talk about the rest. I know that you put these show notes together, so that'd be helpful. The one that I'm really excited about, though, is Scramble. Scramble is a package that allows you to have documentation for your API requests. So when documenting these endpoints for your API, it can be difficult, right? But you can mentally split the task into documenting the request part and then documenting the response part. This guide goes through and gives you a tutorial on how to go into request documentation. So the cool part about this is that Scramble automatically generates the request parameters and bodies documentation. It's really, really good stuff. I don't want to spend too much time on this because we do have 11 to go through, but what I will say is this. We use Scramble ourselves, and it has been a delight to work with. The other options that we tried to use were just not sufficient to the task. It also leverages existing packages that live in the Laravel ecosystem to make this easier. They're not reinventing the wheel. They're using things that a lot of us already use, like Spassie's data package. It's using some of those things and leveraging them to make documenting this stuff easier, and it just feels correct. It feels like what you would use if it was a first-party solution. And so would highly encourage you to check out this tutorial, but also if you're not checking out the tutorial, even at that, just check out Scramble. It's really, really good. We pay for Scramble Pro. Absolutely love it. The other highlight I wanted to talk about was these performance and value objects in Laravel accessors. Now, I just had to explain to one of our junior developers the other day what an accessor was. They're really, really powerful. But in this tutorial here, we're talking about using accessors, not just to return like small changes to a particular value, but to have like built-in caching for these things, using that attribute in that accessor as an opportunity to cache a complex computation or to return some sort of structured data. And it's a good place to put them. We're all interested in creating maintainable, clean code, right? This is a great sort of little nook to hide some of that stuff and put it in there, and it's exactly where you would expect to find it. It's right in the model. It's not in some service class far removed from your model. It's right there. And so really enjoyed this tutorial, reading through it. Would highly encourage you to take a look at that one as well. Michael, I'll let you kind of buzz through the rest of them. I know you typically have a pretty good high level on these ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and shout out to Harris Raftopoulos, who puts all of these together. I think he also is responsible for the Greece Laravel meetup, which is coming up soon. So if you are in the area, definitely check that out. We'll try and get a link to that in the show notes. But streamlining your Laravel models with stringable attributes, catching unintended HTTP requests in Laravel tests, which is an important one. We use this stuff all the time. Specifically in Saloon, but also using that HTTP facade in Laravel, you can prevent stray requests to make sure that you are actually testing all of your HTTP requests using the HTTP fake functionality to make sure that you're not accidentally making external calls as part of your testing. There is ensuring secure URLs in your Laravel application. Sometimes things get a bit funny, especially if you're sitting behind load balancers and things like that. So this is talking about forcing HTTPS and making sure that all of your links are correct in those kinds of situations. We've got queue chains using Laravel's enum integrations. We've got simplified HTTP response mocking, which I think JMac tweeted about this the other day, talking about, if you're using the HTTP fakes, you can say that, everything that goes to a certain URL will just return a 200 OK or a 204, and you can just specify the integer, and you don't have to specify anything else. If you don't care about the response of it, you're just wanting to test a successful code path through your application, that may be all that you need. We're talking about working with Flash session data in Laravel and handling exceptions with Laravel's rescue helper. I love this thing. I use it all the time, especially it is common in Australia to specify, our date format is day, month, year, and it is common to specify that as day/month/year. However, PHP interprets a number/number/number as month, day, year. So if you don't account for that situation, you may end up in a situation where you've got like a 13th month, because we're expecting 13/12 and it's being interpreted as 12/13. And so you end up with a date parse error. So the way that we will correctly work around that is to use day dash, like hyphen month, hyphen year. But this is not how users input data when they're typing dates in, the day, month, year. So we need to handle this situation. So we need to do this specific dance in a few different places where we use the rescue helper to rescue a date where we say date, create from format day/month/year, and then the fallback would be, so instead of having try-catch blocks everywhere, we just use the rescue helper to encapsulate all of this stuff. So definitely check this one out as well. It is very useful in these situations where you don't necessarily want a full try-catch block. You just want to have discrete handling for these errors. But that is the last of the tutorials. Jake's battery, both physically and his battery and his MacBook, are dying. So I think it is time to wrap up episode 233.
I got to tell you, can I give a little sob session here? Can I tell you my day real quick?
Let's do it.
Okay. So needed to get to work early today because we had a client visit. So I was there at 7 this morning, which is not a big deal. No big deal. 7, worked on this presentation that we were doing until our client visit came at 9:30. We were with them and spent some time with them until we had our all staff meeting, which I also run. And that was at 11. And we did that from 11 until like noon. And then we took our clients out to lunch. And when I got back, I had another meeting with one of the, I think it was with the IT guys. And then after the IT guys, I had another impromptu meeting. And then literally I ended the day. I had maybe 30 minutes today to sit at my machine and get a couple things done. After that, I had to run home. I had to lead a small group study tonight at 6, and then we have the podcast tonight. So I have not stopped today. Look, I'm wearing, Michael was like, oh, you're wearing your fancy clothes. Like, dude, I literally got home 30 minutes before this podcast started. I'm going to go crash. So yes, battery on the laptop is dead. Yes, my internal battery is about dead. I'm so close. So if I cut out while I'm giving the final show note wrap up here, my apologies.
This
Folks,
is how
this
you
was
know you have
episode.
ascended too far up the org chart when your day is just meetings after meetings after meetings.
Oh, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And today was one of those days. The good news was, you know what, everything went really well. Everything went really, really well. And so, it was a good day. It was a successful day, but it was a long one for sure. So, folks, thanks so much for taking some time to hang out with us. This is episode 233. If you'd like to find show notes for this episode, you can find them at podcast.laravel-news.com/233. As always, if you liked the podcast, we would really appreciate it if you rated up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be much appreciated. And then if you have any questions for us or comments, we'd love to hear from you on X or on Blue Sky at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at Laravel News. Folks, until next time, it's been a good one. We'll see ya.
Well,